Well, it's definitely been a long while since I've been able to talk about our junior hockey team game recaps, but here I am, finally able to come on with the next episode of. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Hitmen in 6. We're in season 4. This is episode number 7. As we'll talk about games 31 to 36 during the 2021-22 WHL regular season. I also have a couple trades to talk about, as there was the trade deadline that happened in the Western Hockey League, and I'm going to say where the Calgary Hitmen are right now. They did some selling to sell off some veterans, but definitely been a little later than I want to record this next episode. I mean, between a crazy work schedule, crazy bus schedule, and the Calgary Hitmen also were shut down for a week, so a couple of games that got postponed has been rescheduled in this episode. But I did make a video talk about other games that, with the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, have all been rescheduled, that have been postponed. But before I get into my notes and get into the episode itself, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. Appreciate like subscribe both here on my main channel as well as my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts. So as what I've done greatly with my game recap videos is I've started streamlining my notes and looking at the summaries even more, because I just don't have time to make the notes, but there were definitely a lot of notes to make about the Hitmen in this segment, because they definitely had a couple of games that they lost big time. But let's talk about the trades first. So the Calgary Hitmen made a couple trades before I get into the next game. They first made a trade with the Kelowna Rockets. As the Calgary Hitmen, they traded away forward Adam Kidd. He is going to the Okanagan at the Kelowna Rockets. In exchange, the Calgary Hitmen get a forward in Steel Queering. What a name. So Steel Queering now is a Calgary Hitmen for Adam Kidd. That was trade number 1. However, trade number 2, I'm going to say is a lot more significant for the Calgary Hitmen, as we unloaded one of our 20-year-old defensemen, especially to our rival team. But junior hockey trades usually favor in, person's hometown situation, and that. It's not like the same as professional. But the Calgary Hitmen, they traded away defenseman and captain Jackson Vandelies. So Vandy, he is going to the Red Deer Rebels. In exchange, the Calgary Hitmen got a decent package in return for Jackson Vandelies, as they got forward in Blake Stevenson, which I know he is a local here in Calgary, defenseman Trey Patterson, and a 2022 second-round pick. So definitely was a haul for the Calgary Hitmen. I'm going to say they were sellers at the deadline, but look at the standings. I mean, they're still pretty close to being on the line and making the playoffs, but I think Calgary, the best they could do is third in the Central Division, being a distant third behind the Red Deer Rebels and the Edmonton Oil Kings. So with all the trade activity that has gone on with the Calgary Hitmen, some players have got new numbers, and as I mentioned, Captain Jackson Vandelies got traded. So who's the new captain for our Calgary Hitmen? Well, now if you look in your programs, Blake Stevenson now wears number 14. Steel Queering is wearing number 23, so they're both of the forwards. And then the defenseman, Trey Patterson, wears number 3, and it was Cale Zimmerman who ultimately got named as captain. So that is the trades that the Calgary Hitmen made at the WHL trade deadline. I think that's when team activities were suspended as well, because it was early in January when these trades happened for the Calgary Hitmen. But 15 out of 22 teams in the Western Hockey League were shut down at one point. But eventually the Calgary Hitmen got back in action, which will lead us into the first game to recap. So game 31, the next game the Calgary Hitmen finally got to play. It was on Saturday, January the 15th. As they were at home, they were taking on the Prince Albert Raiders. This was a 1 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So how did this game go for the Calgary Hitmen? Well, they did not start off on the right end of the scoreboard, as actually Prince Albert scored first in the first period. It was Zachary Wilson who got his first of the season. This was at the 15-10 minute mark of the first period, and that was the only scoring to go in the game. So Prince Albert Raiders had a 1-0 lead after the first period. However, things did start looking better for the Calgary Hitmen as they had a big second period. First, it was Sean Shigell who tied it up for the Calgary Hitmen. This was his 18th of the season, or 16th of the season, excuse me, as it came at the 7:35 minute mark of the second period. So now we had a 1-1 game at that point. And then it was literally a minute later, a minute 3 later, Calgary took a lead as it was Riley Fitter-Schultz who scored his 17th of the season at 8:38. So now Calgary took a 2-1 lead at that point in the second period. And then it was Sean Shigell who got his second of the game on a power play to make it 3-1 for Calgary. It's also his 17th goal of the season. This happened at the 12:47 minute mark of the second period. So after allowing the first goal in the first period, the Prince Albert Raiders against the Prince Albert Raiders, the Calgary Hitmen scored 3 on the Prince Albert Raiders to now take a 3-1 lead. After the second period, look at the penalty summary. It definitely got a little chippy going in the third period. I'm going to say the Prince Albert Raiders definitely lost some discipline. There were definitely a lot of hooking and holding in the third period, but ultimately the Calgary Hitmen was able to add to their lead. Going into the third period was Blake Stevenson. Got his first goal as a Calgary Hitman, his 13th of the season overall. This happened on the 13:36 minute mark of the third period to make it 4-1 for Calgary, and ultimately the Calgary Hitmen won this game 4-1, and they also outshot the Prince Albert Raiders 33-27 overall in this game. And obviously Sean Shigell led the way for the Calgary Hitmen with 2 goals. However, I would definitely say it was a nice debut for the Blake Stevenson for the Calgary Hitmen. As also we can highlight that Gaden Shovman had 2 assists for the Calgary Hitmen, and then 2 goals for the Sean Shigell, and Riley Fitter-Schultz was a factor with a goal and 2 assists. So that is the Calgary Hitmen story. So look at the goaltending story of the game. Braden Peters made 25 saves for the Calgary Hitmen, while it was Tikon Chika who got in the net for the Prince Albert Raiders. I said that name right. Tikon Chika. That's how I read it. Made 29 saves to the Prince Albert Raiders. So far this episode, things start off good for the Calgary Hitmen. So that was game 31. So game 32, this happened on the next day, on Sunday, January the 16th, as the Calgary Hitmen were hosting the Brandon Wheat Kings. This was a 4 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So how did this one start for the Calgary Hitmen? Well, just like the previous game, they were on the wrong end of it on the scoreboard, as Brendan scored first at 9:46 minute mark of the first period. It was Mason Ward who got his 3rd of the season on the power play. So Brandon took an early 1-0 lead. The Calgary Hitmen definitely got into some penalty trouble early in the first period. They took 3 penalties in the first period. However, it was the first penalty from a checking from behind that gave Brandon the power play. So that was the only goal in the first period. So Brandon took a 1-0 lead after the first period. Going into the second period, it was newly minted captain Cale Zimmerman who ties it up for Calgary, his 8th of the season, at the 8:30 minute mark. So now we have a 1-1 game at that point. And then at 18:26 of the second period, going into the final minute and a half of the second period, Calgary took a 2-0 lead, as it was Zach Funk who got his 11th of the season. And that's how things stood after the second period, as Calgary took a 2-1 lead. And there actually wasn't too many penalties in this game, as there were No penalties to go in the third period, and this definitely looked like a wide open game when we get to the shot summary in this one. So Calgary up 2-1 going into the third period. They weren't quite able to hang on, as Brandon was able to get a tying goal late after they pulled the goalie, as it was Nolan Ritchie who got his 16th of the season. Actually, never mind, this was late in the second period, never mind, as it was 2-2 after the second period. I thought I saw third period, but it was actually Nolan Ritchie who got his 16th of the season at the 18:53 minute mark of the second period. So correction, it was 2-2 after the second period, and then there was no scoring to go in the third period. So as you know what I like to say, this one needs overtime. And it's interesting that I know it mentioned Nolan Ritchie scoring late in the second period. He was the one that actually scored the game-winning goal in overtime at 3:46. So ultimately, the Brandon Wheat Kings, they won this one 3-2 in overtime. So the Calgary Hitmen were able to salvage a point in this weekend set, where they got the win against the Prince Edward Raiders the day before. So they got 3 out of 4 points on this weekend set. The shots were in this game was 45-31 for the Calgary Hitmen. So the way for the Calgary Hitmen, ultimately, no one had actually Zach Funk had a goal and an assist for the only multi-point game for the Calgary Hitmen. And then obviously Nolan Ritchie for the Brandon Wheat Kings led the way with 2 goals. And Riley Ginlow had 2 assists. And Mason Ward had a goal and assist for the Brandon Wheat Kings. So those key players stood out for them. So when it comes to the goaltending story of the game for the Calgary Hitmen, well, this time they put in Ethan Bonaventura in net. He made 28 saves for Calgary, while it was Carson Bjornsson who made 43 saves for the Brandon Wheat Kings. So ultimately, I'm going to say the Calgary Hitmen might have gotten on the wrong end of this one. Got the raw end of the deal, as I felt they outplayed the Brandon Wheat Kings, but they lost this one 3-2 in overtime. So that was game 32. So game 33, this happened on Tuesday, January the 18th. Now the Calgary Hitmen were on the road as they were taking on the Regina Pats. This was at the Brent Center, 6 p.m. puck drop, and this game was scheduled from Tuesday, January 11th. So when the Calgary Hitmen were shut down, this game got postponed, so it got played the week later. So ultimately, the game got made up. So how did things go in Regina for the Calgary Hitmen? Well, in the first period, once again, the visitors scored for, I guess to say the home team, I should say, scored first. It was the Regina Pats who got the first goal at 9:02 of the first period. It was Riker Evans who got his 6th of the season at the 9:02 mark on the power play. However, Calgary answered back almost a minute later, not even a minute, just over a minute later, as Steele Quarian, who made his first goal as a Calgary Hitman, his 7th of the season at the 10:24 minute mark. So it was a 1-1 tie at that point in the game. And then at 15:48 of the first period, Riley Fitter-Schultz got his 18th of the season. So Calgary takes a 2-1 lead, and that's how things stood after the first period, as the Calgary Hitmen took a 2-1 lead going into the second period against the Regina Pats. However, it was the Regina Pats that came out swinging as they took out 23-7 shots. So Calgary definitely felt like it stole this one in the first period, being up 2-1 despite being outshot 23-7. So going into the second period, the Calgary Hitmen added to their lead to make it 3-1, as it was Sean Shigell who got his 18th of the season to make it 3-2. As 3-1, as I meant to say, on his 18th at 6:45 of the second period. However, it was Regina who tied it up. But the midway mark of the second period, as it was Logan Nyhoff who got his 14th of the season on the power play. So we had a 3-2 game for Calgary at this point, and that's how things stood after the second period. Calgary up 3-2. However, there's definitely got chippy in the third period. As first, we'll mention that the Regina Pats, they tied up the game at 3-3, just over the opening minute of the third period, as it was Zach Sturger who got his 8th of the season to make it a 3-3 game. But things definitely got rough in the 7.5 minute mark of the third period, as there definitely was a check in the head, roughing. Zach Stringer, Cale Zimmerman were involved in a roughing check in the head, and then Sean Shigell fought with Riker Evans at 7:45 of the third period, and then there was a roughing penalty as well by Logan Iha. So this definitely looked like a chippy game. This almost looked like a Stampeders Rough Riders game, and then there was definitely more chippiness as there was interference on the goaltender as well on both sides for the Pats and the Hitmen at 11:42. And then late in the game, there was a 10-minute misconduct taken by Keegan Slaney. So it was definitely a very, very chippy game. But it still remained 3-3 at this point. So as I like to say, this one needs overtime. Now when it comes to overtime, there were both chances on both sides. Regina had the better chances in overtime as they outshot the Calgary Hitmen 6-3. However, this one needed a shootout. So going into the shootout, the Calgary Hitmen actually was up first. So was Blake Stevenson, who was up first for the Calgary Hitmen, and he missed. So now going to the Regina side, well, Connor Bedard. Remember, Connor Bedard plays for the Regina Pats. He actually missed on his chance. So the next one up for the Calgary Hitmen was Sean Shigell, and he did score in the second round, while it was Cole Dubinsky who missed for the Regina Pats. So now the game came down to the stick of Tanner Howell for the Regina Pats, and actually he missed. So ultimately, Calgary took this one in a very wild one with a 4-3 win in Regina in a shootout. As I mentioned, Calgary was outplayed at many points in this game and outshot. As overall, the Calgary Hitmen were outshot 44-31 in this one, including Venture Regina outshooting Calgary 23-7 in the first period and 6-3 in overtime. However, Calgary did outshoot Regina 16-6 in the second period. So leading the way for the Calgary Hitmen was Riley Fair-Schultz, was the only one at the multi-point game, as he had 1 goal and 1 assist. And then Logan Nyhoff, who had a goal and assist for Regina, and Tanner Howell had 3 assists. I wonder if he's related to Gordy, because it's about the same way, but he had 3 assists. And Connor Bedard was held, he had 1 assist in this one, just to be interested that way, and he took 7 shots on net, so he definitely was granted exceptional status. So he's the face of the Regina Pats and favorite to be the first overall pick in 2023. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, Brady Peters was a net for Calgary. He made 41 saves. Well, it was Drew Sim who made 28 saves for the Regina Pats. So this one definitely was a wild one. I felt like Calgary might have stole this one, despite being outplayed, but definitely were a lot of interesting fisticuffs. This is something with Calgary and Saskatchewan games that has to be extra interesting, and Ian goes down at the junior hockey level. So that was game 33. So game 34, this happened the next night on Wednesday, January the 19th. The Calgary Hitmen were still on the road as they were taking on the Moose Jaw Warriors at Mosaic Place. 6 p.m. puck drop, and this game also was one of those games that got rescheduled. Originally was rescheduled on Wednesday, January 12th, but got rescheduled to a week later. And maybe it was not a good thing that maybe Calgary wasn't looking good in this game, as I'll get to shortly. As if you look in the first period, it definitely was apparent that we were not going to win this game, as Moose Jaw took 2 quick goals early in the first period. First, it was Jagger Furcus, who got his 22nd of the season at 2:21 of the first period. And then Riley Niven, who got his second of the season at 3:33 in the first period. So Moose Jaw took an early 2-0 lead, and that's actually how things stood after the first period, as Moose Jaw took an early 2-0 lead. However, if you get to the second period, definitely task was going to be much tougher for the Calgary Hitmen, as if you go into the second period, it was Jagger Furcus who also, like in the first period, scored this time at 2:26. He got his second of the game at 2:26 of the second period, or after he scored his first of the game at 2:21. This was his 23rd of the season, so Moose Jaw took a 3-0 lead at that point, and then Moose Jaw made it 4-0 as his Maximus Wainer, who got his third of the season at 5:57, and then Lucas Burton on the ensuing face-off after that goal got his second of the season at 6:09. So now Moose Jaw, they're up 5-0. Then the ugliness still continues for the Calgary Hitmen, as it was Cordell Larson who got his sixth of the season at 12:26. So the Moose Jaw Warriors at that point took a 6-0 lead. However, with 19:21 in the second period, at least the Calgary Hitmen got on the board. Yay! As it was Riley Fitter-Schultz who got his 19th of the season on the power play. So we were only down by 5 after the second period, 6-1. A field goal into safety, right? Except this is not football, unfortunately. So with a 6-1 deficit, definitely was not looking like this was the Calgary Hitmen's game for sure. And then when it comes to the rough stuff, when it comes to the third period, there was definitely some roughing that going on. It went to the roughing at the 8-minute mark between Zach Funk and Ryder Korzak. But actually Calgary was able to chip away at the lead. Let's just say a plastic spoon on sandstone chipping away. As it was Graydon Shipman who got his 5th of the season at 9:59. So now it's 6-2 for the Moose Jaw Warriors. However, Moose Jaw definitely wanted to make sure they had this one in the bag, as they got 2 more goals in the third period. It was Ryder Korzak who got his 13th of the season on the power play at 10:54 to make it 7-2. And then there's Cordell Lawson who scored a 7th with literally 4 seconds to go in the game to make it 8-2. So ultimately, the Saskatchewan didn't end off on a good note for the Calgary Hitmen, as they lost this one 8-2. So no one had a multi-point game for the Calgary Hitmen, but multi-point games go around for the Moose Jaw Warriors. Both Jager Furcus and, of course, Cordell Lawson each had a goal, 2 goals and an assist. And then you got Damon Hunt, as well as Antley Calvert, Nathan Pilling, and Cole Jordan, each having 2 assists for the Moose Jaw Warriors. So points are able to go around. Actually, looking at their summary here, 1, 2, 3 skaters did not collect a point at all in this game, but that happens when you have 8 goals scored on the team. Then when it comes to the goaltending story of the game, actually Ethan Bonaventure, he was in net for the whole game. He made 36 saves on 44 shots, and then it was Karl Tegyuk who had 18 saves on 20 shots. As they say, yeah, the Calgary Hitmen were outshot 44-20 in this one. So definitely was not the Calgary Hitmen's day, as they were outshot 23-8 in the second period and 12-6 in the third period. So wasn't a good way to play the makeup game against the Moose Jaw Warriors. So that was game 34. So game 35, this happened on Friday, January 21st, as the Calgary Hitmen were working their way back to Calgary from Regina, going west on the number 1. So on Friday, January 21st, the Calgary Hitmen were taking on the Swift Current Broncos at the Innovation Credit Union iPlex. So how did things go in Swift Current? For the Calgary Hitmen, well, unlike the previous games, the Calgary Hitmen actually scored the first goal of the game, as at the 10:40 minute mark of the first period. It was newly Calgary Hitmen Blake Stevenson who got his 14th of the season on a power play at 10:40, and that was the only goal of the game in the first period. So Calgary took an early, or not fairly early, but they took a 1-0 lead after the first period, and that's how things stood after the first period. Second period, though, the Moose Jaw Warriors did answer back, as it was Josh Fillon who got his 16th of the season. This happened at 6:55, and that was the only goal of the second period. So Calgary got 1 in the first period, Swift Current got 1 in the second period. So we have a 1-1 tie going into the third period. This game was fairly, cleanly played, but Moose Jaw Warriors definitely took a couple penalties late in the third period at the 13-minute mark, which definitely will bite them at the end as we get through the summary. So going into the third period, tied up at 1-1, Swift Current actually took a 2-1 lead, as it was Caleb Westbrook who got his 9th of the season at 5:31. So now Swift Current took their first lead of the game at 2-1. However, the Calgary Hitmen was able to answer back, as it was David Ananowski who got his 5th of the season at 7:08 to tie up the game at 2-2. And then Blake Stevenson, he actually got his 2nd of the game. This was at the 7:33 minute mark. So at the 7-minute mark, the Calgary Hitmen scored twice, as he got his 15th, 2nd of the game. So now Calgary is back up 3-2. And I mentioned the Swift Current Broncos took a couple penalties to be down by 2 at the 13-minute mark, and the Calgary Hitmen made them pay, as there was Riley Fair-Schultz who got his 20th of the season at 14:24 to now make it 4-2 for Calgary at this point of the game. And then Riley Fair-Schultz got his 2nd of the game in the empty net with 4 seconds left, his 21st of the season, to make it 5-2. And ultimately, the Calgary Hitmen at least end off Saskatchewan trip on a high note by winning this one 5-2. When it comes to shots on goal, well, there were definitely a lot of shots on both sides of this game, as Swift Current actually outshot the Calgary Hitmen 43-41. So it definitely was a wide open game. But ultimately, the Calgary Hitmen paid the price, or made the Swift Current Broncos pay the price for getting into penalty trouble going into the third period. So leading the way for the Calgary Hitmen was Blake Stevenson with 2 goals and assist, as well as Riley Fair-Schultz with 2 goals. And then when it comes to Sean Shaquille, he had 2 assists. So those are the multi-point getters for the Calgary Hitmen. Swift Current Broncos had no multi-point getters. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, it was Brady Peters who made 41 saves for Calgary, while it was Isaac Colche, he was also fairly busy too for the Swift Current Broncos. He made 36 saves. 1 shot was an empty netter for the Swift Calgary Hitmen, so he didn't allow that one. So that was game 35, as they won 5-2 against the Swift Current Broncos. So the last game for this episode before we move on to other business, game 36, this happened on Sunday, January the 23rd, as the Calgary Hitmen were back at home, this time hosting the Moose Jaw Warriors. This was a 4 p.m. puck drop at Scotiabank Stadium, and will things be a little better for the Calgary Hitmen against the Moose Jaw Warriors, considering they were shellacked 8-2 in their house earlier in the week? Well, things did not look good early for the Calgary Hitmen. However, it wasn't as bad, if I can put it lightly. The first goal of the game went to the Moose Jaw Warriors, but it wasn't until the 16:03 minute mark of the first period, as it was Josh Hoekstra who got his 2nd of the season to make it 1-0 Moose Jaw, and that's how things stood after the first period. And actually, interesting, there were only 2 penalties taken in this game, so it was a fairly clean game played for both sides. So going into the second period, the Moose Jaw Warriors added to their lead, as it was Nathan Pilling who got his 4th of the season at 7:28. So it was 2-0 for Moose Jaw at this point of the game. And then you could kind of say, well, there was a dagger that was scored, but I think the Calgary Hitmen also softened the blow, because there were 2 goals scored just before the buzzer sound. So it would suck if you had to go to the bathroom and try to beat the rush in this one, because Moose Jaw made it 3-0. First, it was Miaja Korja, if I said the name right, who scored his 2nd of the season at 19:10 to make it 3-0 for Moose Jaw. However, Graydon Simpson for the Calgary Hitmen, with 3 seconds to go in the second period at 19:57, got on the board to make it 3-1. So we had a 3-1 game going into the third period, when it looked like it could have been 2-0 going into the third period. So there were 2 late goals in the final minute of the second period. However, the game stayed 3-1 for the whole way through. Definitely was at least better for the Calgary Hitmen, but ultimately it was the Moose Jaw Warriors that put it away, as it was Cordell Lawson who got his 9th of the season in the empty net at 19:32. So Moose Jaw ultimately won this one 4-1. So at least it was half the blow, if it makes any progress. We lost 8-2 in their house, and we only lost 4-1 to Moose Jaw in this one. So who stood the way for the Calgary Hitmen? Well, there was no multi-point player, as we only scored 1 goal. So on the Moose Jaw Warriors side of the puck, it was Cordell Lawson who got a goal and assist, and it was Atlee Calvert who got 2 assists for Moose Jaw. And then when it comes to the shots on goal, Calgary actually outshot Moose Jaw 31-21, so I'm going to say all things considered, they definitely played better than they did Wednesday before in Moose Jaw, but still had the same result. They all count the same in the standings. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, Braden Peters made 17 saves for Calgary on 20 shots, and it was Kyle Chegiak who made 30 saves on 31 shots. So where do the Calgary Hitmen stand as we go to the look at the other business when it comes to the Calgary Hitmen? Well, after 36 games, the Calgary Hitmen have 16 wins, 14 losses, 4 overtime losses, and 2 shootout losses. They have 4 columns in the Western Hockey League, which puts them third in the Central Division, which is still a playoff spot, but I'm going to dare say it's a distant third when you look at the standings. So now let's take a look at the stats and standings, shall we? Let's take a look at the quick stats for the Calgary Hitmen. Well, Riley Fitter-Schultz leads the way for the Calgary Hitmen. After 36 games, he has 21 goals, 26 assists for 47 points. And then Blake Stevenson is actually listed as second in scoring for the Calgary Hitmen. He has played 40 games this season with 15 goals, 22 assists for 37 points. However, he's played 6 of those games with Calgary, where he has 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. And third in scoring is Sean Chigel. In 36 games, he has 18 goals, 18 assists for 36 points. Fourth in scoring is Zach Funk, who has 35 games played, 11 goals, 10 assists for 21 points. Around the top 5 is Cale Zimmerman, the new captain. After 33 games, they have 9 goals, 10 assists for 16 points. So now if we look at the goaltending story of the game, I'm just going to get these extra columns out that they don't put it out on default on the website. So when it comes to the goaltending, just give me a minute here. It's funny they don't put the the save percentage and wins and losses. Like, those are what I look forward to in goaltending. When you look at Braden Peters, he has right now he has 15, 3, 13, and 2. Or he has 2 shots. He has 15 wins, 13 losses, and he has a goals against average of .283 and a save percentage of .909. So that's Braden Peters' stats. And then Ethan Bonaventura, he has a goal, 1 win, 1 loss, as he's only played in 7 games. He has a 362 goals against average and an 872 save percentage. So that is the stats and story for the Calgary Hitmen. So now, or I should say the stats. Now let's get into the standings, shall we? And we'll take a look at the standings league-wide like I usually do in these videos, once it brings it up here. And let's take a look at how everyone's doing in each division. So let's start off in the Western Conference, shall we? So the Everett Silvertips lead the U.S. division. After 38 games, they have 58 points. And then the Portland Winterhawks, after 38 games, they got 49 points. And then the Seattle Thunderbirds, after 36 games, they have 48 points. And then the Tri-City Americans, after 35 games, they had 28 points. And then the Spokane Chiefs, after 36 games, have 24 points. BC division, the Kamloops Blazers lead. After 37 games, they have 51 points. Second place is the Kelowna Rockets. After 34 games, they have 44 points. Third place, Prince George Cougars. After 38 games, they have 36 points. Vancouver Giants in fourth place, 36 games played, they have 34 points. Then the Victoria Royals are in fifth place. After 38 games, they have 29 points. Now the Central Division, where the Calgary Hitmen is. Well, as I mentioned, the Edmonton Whalekings lead the way. After 40 games, they have 57 points. And then the Red Deer Rebels, after 40 games, they have 53 points. Then the Calgary Hitmen, after 36 games, they have 38 points. See what I mean when I say a distant third. Then the Swift Current Broncos, after 38 games, they have 33 points. Lethbridge Hurricanes, well, they're the first team that got shut down. They've only played 33 games. They have 31 points. And then the Medicine Hat Tigers are in sixth place in the Central Division with 37 games played and 20 points. So now if you go to the East Division, well, the cream of the crop is still the Winnipeg Ice. After 37 games, they have 60 points. And then in second place is the Moose Jaw Warriors. After 41 games, they have 46 points. Third place is the Saskatchewan Blades. After 37 games, they have 44 points. And then fourth place is the Brandon Wheat Kings. After 36 games, they have 40 points. And then in fifth place, the Regina Pats. 34 games, they have 33 points. And then last but not least, sixth place is the Prince Albert Raiders. After 39 games, they have 32 points. The East Division is definitely a lot stronger than the Central Division in the Eastern Conference. So now, this is where I'll take a look ahead to the next 6 games for the Calgary Hitmen on the schedule. So the next game for the Calgary Hitmen for game 37. This will be on Friday, January the 28th, as the Calgary Hitmen will be at home against the Lethbridge Hurricanes. That'll be a 7 p.m. puck drop. And then game 38, this will be on Saturday, January the 29th. The Calgary Hitmen, they go on the road to take on the Medicine Hat Tigers at Co-op Place. 7 p.m. puck drop. And then game 39, this will be on Sunday, January the 30th. So they got a 3-game set this weekend coming up. They go back home to take on the Swift Current Broncos. This will be a 4 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Stadium. And the game 40, this will be on Sunday, February the 6th. So after a busy week, they got a lighter weekend ahead as they take on the Regina Pats at home. This will be a 2 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Stadium. Chance to see Connor Bedard. Game 41, this will be on Tuesday, February the 8th. As the Calgary Hitmen now go on the road, they make another trip to Saskatchewan as they go to Prince Albert to take on the Prince Albert Raiders. That'll be a 6 p.m. puck drop at the Art Hauser Center. And then game 42, which will be all games I'll talk about in the next episode, on Wednesday, February the 9th. The Calgary Hitmen will be taking on the Saskatchewan Blades in Saskatoon for a 6 p.m. puck drop. So that's all I have for my Calgary Hitmen in 6 for episode 7 in season 4. Definitely wasn't much longer anticipated wait to get the video in between the shutdown and my sometimes crazy schedule, but here it is. So, as I like to say, I'll close it out. If you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, or recap games and stories and all that. But I also do have a variety of non-sports content. Keywords here is one at a time, like in personal blogs. Attempt to call me and do share my experience some on the road or a sport event, and I've done some vlogging to go, which February coming around the corner. I do plan to take in some Chinook Blast again this year in Calgary in 2022. So if that all sounds like be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, you know what you do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. As well, I have my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts, where on that channel I exclusively put my short form content on there. So I appreciate like, subscribe, both here on my main channel as well as my second channel. So thanks for watching. So hey, let's go Hitmen, and I'll see you in the next video.